Hello YouTube, my name is Sean Connors and welcome back to The Outsiders. It's actually very exciting news tonight because what I'm going to be talking to you about is an idea that's a collaboration idea between myself and dawnforgedcast, Andrew of that channel. And the idea is that we're going to look at the Pathfinder classes independently but on the same day. We're going to come together and release our videos on the same day. We won't know what each other has done, and the idea is that we're going to dissect that class and give you some pointers about getting the best out of that particular class, our view on it, and it will be our view on it, which I think is a fantastic idea. So I'm going to break this video into little chunks and connect them and strip them all together so that you get a real feel for that. The first thing is I've made no assumptions, so I'm not assuming that point buy is being used, and I'm not assuming that it's rolled stats. It could be anything. That's my assumption. I've got Bubbles with me, who's obviously going to join in the video. The other thing, of course, as well, is that I've had to make the decision that I'm not going to try and career build a class from first level all the way up. I'm just going to give you an overview how to get the best out of that class. For the assumption of this video, it's going to be sticking to the Barbarian class only. So let's start with the first few points. Okay, first points that I would consider is looking at the class's strengths. Okay, what is it that class does really well? So let's go through those quickly in no particular order. The first thing has fantastic hit points. It has the best dice in the game for hit points, in this case being a D12. So that's significant and something always to bear that in mind. It has phenomenal manoeuvrability because of one of its class features. So it's going to increase your base movement by 10 feet per round, no matter what race you are, even if you're quite small. So again, that's quite significant. Without a doubt, they can make superb, what I'll call single-use fighters. Someone who pretty much puts all their eggs in a basket. They can make exceptional fighters. And they have rage powers to support this fighter build, which I think is fantastic, and they're very interesting. So I think those are the key 4 strengths. Let's now look at the class's weaknesses, and again we'll try and cover off 4 key weaknesses for the class. You have an okay armor class, but it's not that great. It's never going to be the strength of the character. You can only wear medium build armor, so you can't get the high armor class ranges that exist. Plus, of course, chances are you're going to want to play a Barbarian because he's going to have to put all his eggs in one basket in terms of the weapon he uses. You're probably going to use a big weapon of some kind, so you're going to be limited. You're not even going to have a shield to back up that armor class, but thankfully you do have the high hits. As I've said, could be regarded as a weakness. You pretty much have to specialise in one weapon. Of course you have multiple weapons that you can use at the drop of a hat, but to get the best out of the class you can only use one. You have very limited feats in regard to what a traditional straight fighter gets, so you've got to make those count. And you have the Achilles heel of poor wheel saves, which is often what stops most fighters in their track. And I'll use the word fighter, even though you're a barbarian. In no particular order, I'd like to give some basic barbarian tips. I'll start with one of the more obvious ones for me. In Pathfinder, every class has the option at any level to either take an extra skill point or an extra hit point. For my money, playing a barbarian, I would always suggest that you take the extra hit point. It already supports your already fantastic hit points, and over the course of a whole campaign that could be worth as much as at least 1 level or 2 levels worth of character. Cannot be underrated how important that is to you, as your armour class is not going to be as high as other people's around you in some cases when we're talking about straight barbarian against fighter. So that's what I would suggest you do. For stats, the order of which I would take the stats, it can be debated, of course, like all things can be debated. But there are 3 that stand out. This is a very simple class to talk about. The 3 primary stats are physical, and the 3 less important ones are mental style stats. So in the case of Pathfinder, the 3 physical ones are strength, con and dexterity. I would actually have them in that order as well, strength being the most important for my opinion, constitution, then dex. But you could argue it either way depending on how you want to play the character. For the purposes of this build, that is the order that I'll put them in. For the purposes of the 3 mental side stats to the character, which are will, intelligence and charisma, that is again the order that I would put them in terms of priority. However, they can be switched around how you see fit. The only reason that I've put will there at 4th is again to support the saving throws maybe of what you have as an issue in the character build, which is that you don't traditionally have very good will saves. Again, you could argue it that you could put this as more of a priority for any of those stats. It's very much down to what you want to get out of it, of course. But I'm just giving you some basics to some of the best ways to set up the character, in my view. Now let's look at races, and I'm going to start in a slightly different way. These are the races that I believe work best for the Barbarian build. Again, of course it's your choice. These are just my view of the best races that work well with the class. And not in any particular order, but I'm going to take the most unusual one first, which is the Dwarf build. Now, playing a Dwarf will give you some interesting advantages. +2 on con, we've already said how many hit points you get. No harm in getting even more. And a +2 wisdom. Now, we've already said about how that can be an Achilles heel of most fighter style builds, Barbarian being one of them. You do gain a -2 charisma, but given the fact that we've discussed that that could well be something you're going to have to live with, you're never going to have the charm or the personality to carry most things off. You're going to have to rely on brute force and pretty much ignorance. It's a penalty probably worth bearing. And again, it's a possible build you could choose. Now, the other advantage that comes with this race is, of course, they have 60-foot dark vision. That cannot be underestimated how useful that is in any low-level game. I think it's absolutely fantastic. And it's lovely to have, that's for sure. Another nice touch, of course, playing a Dwarf is that you get +4 dodge bonus against giant class types, which again is beautiful. You also get a beautiful bonus on saving throw bonus versus poison, spell and spell-like abilities. Fantastic bonus, irrespective of your stats. What a wonderful bonus, as most of the problems that you'll face in terms of non-combat problems are going to be things like that. So it's a very nice bonus. And plus you get a little bonus because of your short, stocky nature of +4 against attempt to ball rush you or trip you over. Your base speed is normally low for a Dwarf at 20 foot, but because of the fast movement, you now have a normal human base movement of 30, which makes you exceptionally quick. So that's certainly one race I would consider. Another race worth considering is a more traditional one, Half-orc. Half-orcs now get a +2 bonus in any stat of their choice. For my money, I would be placing that straight into strength for obvious reasons, but you could easily argue con, dex, or anything else that you want the character to do. But again, for purposes of this build, as it's my particular way of building them, I would put it into strength. You also get 60-foot dark vision for this class, and your base movement traditionally starts off at 30, which is fantastic, but of course will become 40. That is phenomenal movement on the battlefield, and speed can kill, literally. You do have a special ability called Orc Ferocity, which means that if you drop below 0 but aren't actually killed outright, for 1 round and 1 round only, you can still stand and carry out an action. So it could be the difference of life and death as you manoeuvre from the battlefield to gain aid, or rush in to attempt one more final attack. I've seen, personally, okay, it's only situational, how useful that can be. So that is another race that I would consider. There's also one more part to this race that is very interesting. They're proficient, orcs are proficient, naturally proficient with great axes and falchions, which is a nice touch, as we're going to go on to in a later section of this particular build. Final race that I'd like to talk about that I think fits the build very well is humans, of course. They get a +2 bonus to stat builds at the very beginning. That's +2 bonus on any stat that they want to increase. Again, for the same reasons as the Orc previously, I would put it primarily in strength, but you could argue for con or dexterity or any of the other stats. But for the purpose, again, of this video, I'm going to be placing it in strength as my recommendation. They have a 30-foot base move, which will increase to 40 because you're playing a Barbarian. The other thing they do gain, which is very, very significant, is the extra feat at first level. And given the fact that Barbarians have limited feat choices, this is hugely significant. And again, one of the reasons why they tend to be highly played by a number of players. But I've given you 3 options I think can work very well.